Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic I think a lot of us can relate to,
For sure.
turning vocal struggles into breakthroughs.
Yeah,
We all face them, those moments where we feel stuck vocally. Sometimes it's tempting to just kind of throw in the towel, right?
absolutely.
But this article I've been digging into, it suggests that those struggles are actually the key
Oh, yeah,
to unlocking our full potential as singers.
totally.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's so true. I mean, think about it. Like any skill you're trying to develop, you're going to hit those roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those roadblocks that really force you to kind of step back and reevaluate,
Yeah.
figure out what's not working and how you can approach things differently.
That's such a good point, and the article really dives into that idea that those moments of frustration, those plateaus we hit,
Right.
they can actually be the catalyst for some serious vocal growth.
Totally.
It even compares it to like a workout, you don't get stronger by staying in your comfort zone.
Exactly. You got to push those limits, even if it means feeling a little bit uncomfortable.
It's like you're challenging those vocal muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. And that discomfort, that's where the real growth happens.
And speaking of pushing limits and overcoming challenges, the article also talks about some legendary singers and the vocal hurdles they face.
Oh, yeah, some really inspiring stories.
Like, did you know Steven Tyler had to have multiple vocal surgeries?
I did. I did
Oh,
know that. And it's pretty amazing to think about how he was able to come back from that.
right. I mean, that could have been career ending for a lot of singers.
For sure.
But he actually rebuilt his voice through intense training and, what it's like. His voice became even more powerful and expressive after that.
It's almost like those challenges forced him to really dig deep and find new ways to use his voice.
Absolutely. And then there's Freddie Mercury, who struggled with vocal nodules.
Hmm.
But instead of letting that silence him, he just adapted his technique and focused on using his chest voice more,
Right.
which ultimately gave his performances that raw, powerful sound that we all love.
Totally. I mean, his voice was so unique. And part of what made it so unique was the way he embraced and worked with his vocal challenges.
And it's like those imperfections, those struggles actually became part of their signature sound.
Absolutely. They didn't try to hide them, they embraced them.
And the author of this article, they even share their own story about discovering their mix
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
much later in their singing journey, which, for those of us who might not be familiar with the term, can you explain what vocal mix is and why it's so important?
Sure. So, vocal mix is essentially about blending your chest voice, which is that lower, more powerful register, with your head voice, which is higher and lighter.
Okay.
And you're blending those together to create a seamless sound across your entire range.
So it's like you're smoothing out the transitions between those different registers.
Exactly. And it allows you to hit those high notes without straining or breaking.
That makes sense. And what I found really fascinating was that the author discovered their mix not through some fancy technique or anything, but through a period of intense struggle.
Hmm.
They hit a wall, felt frustrated, and in that process of trying to break through, they stumbled upon this whole new dimension to their voice.
It's like sometimes those struggles force us to get creative and explore new possibilities that we might not have otherwise considered.
Yeah. And it's so encouraging to hear that even seasoned singers are still evolving and discovering new things about their voices.
Absolutely. It's a lifelong journey, and those struggles are just part of the process.
Okay, so we've seen how these struggles can actually be opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
But how do we actually take that frustration and turn it into progress? Like, what are some practical steps we can take?
Yeah, well, the article goes on to outline some really helpful strategies, starting with pinpointing the specific problem you're facing.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I'm struggling with my singing,
Hmm.
it's more about figuring out what specifically am I struggling with.
Exactly. You need to get really clear on what's causing the struggle so you can then start addressing it effectively.
Right, and is that where a vocal coach comes in?
A vocal coach can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. So for someone who's maybe on the fence about getting a coach,
Hmm.
can you talk a little bit about the benefits?
Sure. So while consistent self-practice is obviously super important, a good vocal coach can really take things to the next level.
Okay.
They have the expertise to spot those subtle technical issues that you might be missing, and they can tailor exercises to your specific needs.
It's like having a personal trainer for your voice.
Exactly. They can guide you, push you, and help you break through those plateaus that we were talking about.
That makes so much sense. And, I think sometimes we try to go it alone and figure things out ourselves.
Yeah.
But having that outside perspective from someone who really knows their stuff can be invaluable.
Absolutely. And a coach can also help you avoid bad habits and techniques that could lead to strain or injury.
Oh, that's so important. I mean, we only get one voice, right?
Exactly. You want to make sure you're taking care of it.
So identifying the problem-seeking guidance from a coach. And then what about the practice itself?
Well, the article really stresses the importance of intentional practice.
Yep.
It's not just about mindlessly running through exercises. It's about having a clear focus and working on those specific areas that need improvement.
So for example, let's say someone is struggling with breath control.
Yeah.
What would intentional practice look like for them?
Well, for breath control, they might focus on diaphragmatic breathing exercises,
Okay.
really making sure they're expanding their rib cage, engaging the diaphragm correctly, and they could also practice sustaining notes for longer periods, gradually increasing the duration as they build stamina.
So it's all about being really targeted in your approach.
Exactly. And it's also helpful to keep track of your progress.
Oh, yeah, like a practice journal or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That way you can see how far you've come, and it can be really motivating.
And, it's so important to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes we get so focused on the end goal that we forget to acknowledge all the progress we're making.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in what's not working,
Yeah.
but it's equally important to recognize and celebrate what is working.
And even with the best practice strategies, frustration is inevitable, right?
Oh, for sure.
There are going to be times when you feel stuck, like you're just not making any headway.
Absolutely. And those moments can be really discouraging.
Ugh, yeah, they can.
But the article offers some really helpful advice for dealing with that frustration.
Okay, like what?
Well, instead of viewing frustration as a negative thing, try to see it as a sign that you're pushing yourself, that you're stretching those vocal limits.
So it's like, okay, this is hard, which means I'm actually learning and growing.
Exactly. Remember those stories about Steven Tyler and Freddie Mercury?
Yeah.
They didn't shy away from challenges. They embraced them, and they used those challenges to fuel their growth.
It's so true. Their imperfections, those struggles, they actually became part of what made them so unique and so captivating.
Absolutely, and that's something that's available to all of us. It's about learning to work with those imperfections rather than trying to erase them.
So it's like those imperfections are actually part of our unique vocal fingerprint.
Exactly, and they can be a source of strength and individuality.
Okay, so instead of, ugh, I'm terrible at this, it's more like, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to keep pushing through it because I know it's making me a better singer.
Exactly, and remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
It's funny. I used to think like the ultimate goal was to reach this point where singing was just effortless, you know?
Yeah, like no more struggles, no more hurdles.
But now I'm realizing those moments of friction, those challenges, they're actually what push us to grow and evolve as singers.
I think that's such a great point. It's like those struggles are kind of like signposts, you know?
Oh, yeah.
They're pointing us in the right direction, showing us where we need to work and how we can improve.
And it's in those moments of discomfort that we often discover new things about our voices, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking about with Steven Tyler and Freddie Mercury.
Mhm.
Their struggles, their imperfections, those became part of what made their voices so unique and so memorable.
It's so true. It's like they turned their limitations into strengths.
Exactly. And that's something that every singer can do.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about embracing those imperfections and learning to work with them.
So for our listener out there who's maybe feeling a bit discouraged, they're hitting those walls,
Yeah.
what would you say to encourage them to keep pushing forward on their vocal journey?
I would say, first of all, just remember that everyone faces challenges.
Mm.
It's part of the process.
Mm.
It's not a sign that you're not good enough or that you're not meant to be a
Ah,
singer.
that's so important.
It's just a sign that you're learning and growing. And
Yeah.
trust me, those struggles, they will make you a stronger, more resilient singer in the long run.
And sometimes we just need to hear that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to hit those roadblocks, but don't let them stop you.
Exactly. Keep practicing, keep exploring, keep pushing those boundaries, and most importantly, never give up on your passion.
That's such great advice. So to wrap things up, I think the big takeaway here is that those vocal struggles we all face, they're not something to fear or avoid. They're actually opportunities for growth and discovery.
I totally agree. It's all about shifting our perspective and seeing those challenges as stepping stones on our path to becoming better singers.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a really insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And for our listeners out there, remember those struggles you're facing. They're not the end of the story. They're just the beginning. Keep singing, keep exploring, and never stop believing in the power of your own voice.